There was a summer about 18 years ago when I actually heard the gospel preached for the first time. And this preacher's preaching helped me to see the gap between how Jesus called us to live and how I was actually living. My heart sank because I realized that being a Christian had an action set. With the gospel ringing in my ears, I knew I needed to do something. Fast forward to the fall of 2017. Pastor Heather Gillard, who has a heart for mission, started recruiting for a program called Dinner Church. The idea pitched was to go out into sore neighborhoods around town and invite guests to an abundant feast and share with them a Jesus story and a message of hope. At some point when relationships are formed, guests will begin talking about their limitations. We then share our own limitations back with our guest. Maybe after hearing Jesus stories and a message of hope, guests will begin talking about their spirituality. Then we share with them our own stories of transformation. This is where the healing happens. And for some reason, without hesitation, I joined the team. On April 21st, the Dinner Church team served its fourth dinner. And after each event, I've reflected on my own abundance and the lack of abundance of our guest. And I've been shaken to the core. What follows is my journal entry for the following morning. Last night, I encountered a holy moment of grace at Dinner Church when Tammy Cohn led the hymn sing-along. Tammy has a beautiful voice that is heavenly on its own. But what really caught my attention was the reaction of our dinner guest. Next to me was a simple man who lived by himself for the last 18 years in a single-room apartment. I don't know if he'd ever sung a hymn before, but he mouthed the words and was totally captured by the moment. Nearby, a deputy sheriff wearing a bulletproof vest sang too. His face was full of emotion. Towards the back, a lady stood up at her table to sing, "How Great Thou Art." On the other side of a room, a female postal worker who had just gotten off work looked as though this was the first time all week she'd encountered something lovely. In the middle of the room, some older women, one with a respirator mask, were reverently singing. I saw God's holy hand touching people around the room with his sweet, loving, forgiving, healing, and reconciling spirit. I will carry the spirit with me, and I'm certain others who participated will too. After more remembering, I could have added to my journal. Sitting on the other side of me was another man who showed up late. This was the third time I'd met him. Each time, he'd been inebriated and most of his talk had been hard to understand. But each time, through the grace of Jesus Christ, he had at least a moment of clarity. The first time it was after Heather's message. He looked at me and whispered that he prayed every night before going to sleep, even though he didn't deserve forgiveness. The second time I met him, it was the same, mostly loud and unintelligible. But then towards the end of dinner, he looked over at me and said, "It takes y'all a lot of work to do this dinner. Y'all are good people." Last week, he was inebriated more, if that's possible. He was louder and even less clear with his words. But as the hymn sing-along started, he stopped eating his food and cocked his head sideways. Like Peter, who 3 times replied to Jesus when he asked him if he loved him, the man said, "I didn't expect that." I said, "You mean Tammy's beautiful voice?" He said, "I didn't expect that." I said, "You mean Tammy's beautiful voice?" He said, "I didn't expect that." Then the moment of clarity was over. After the message of hope and before the hymns were sung, I asked the simple man on the other side of me how he kept busy. He said he was working to get his apartment cleaned up because the landlord was about to conduct the annual inspection, and he had a cat he took care of. Then he added, "Since I can't keep paid work, maybe I should start to do some volunteering." A few weeks back, on the 50th anniversary of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I watched a short clip of an interview he did shortly before his death. Dr. King said, "I'm all for people taking responsibility for themselves and picking themselves up by their bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to ask the bootless man to lift himself up by his bootstraps." There are broken and bootless people all around us. More of Jesus and his dinner church is needed in our community.